Hello, guys. Welcome to the latest episode of the Footy Notes podcast. I'm your host, Bonisile Ntlemeza. Appreciate you for the support that you've shown to my channel and my little growing podcast. See people from Singapore, the Netherlands, France, Germany, Ireland, and of course the US, which is where I'm residing for the last decade and a bit now. So today I don't have this very specific game I want to talk about more than just I want to look at the events of the Champions League and this new format. It's still very hard, I think, for most of us who are familiar with the old format of the Champions League to understand what results mean in this particular phase. Because I keep thinking back to last season where Liverpool were, the top team going into the knockout phase. And then they faced a PSG team who had to play into the knockouts, right? Via the playoff, whatever. And PSG ended up winning the whole thing. And they knocked out Liverpool, they knocked out Aston Villa, they knocked out Arsenal, and were deserving winners because, they peaked at the right time. And I think something most people who watch English football will have also been familiar with as far as it related to the Champions League is that the English teams tend to be at a slight disadvantage due to the congestion of talent in the Premier League. I'm going to call it that. So you can call it something else. Some people will call it the strength of the league. That is the Premier League. Means that you are playing on most days a game that is, that means something. It's very difficult in the Premier League to have gimmies than like you do in Spain or in some situations, especially sometimes when teams like Bayern and PSG and Barcelona, as well as Real Madrid, they pretty much own the other teams in their league. Not literally, but it seems to me that they usually will have a pathway to winning their league a lot of times by March, maybe going into April, but with very little jeopardy by mid-March going into April. So they're able to rest teams. And the other thing is also, I don't know if it's because there's so much money, TV money in England, that maybe the Premier League is not able or is not willing to give teams from England that are in the knockout phases some grace when it comes to fixtures. I think, I've seen PSG games be rescheduled if they have, an important game coming up in the Champions League. I've seen other leagues do something similar, in some of the other top five leagues in Europe. In England, this never happens. I say that to say it's very hard to know what any of this means. I look at the Champions League table right now, and you have, of the top 8 teams, so being in the top 8 means you skip around. In the month of February, there's a round where teams that are from number 9 to number 24, those teams all have to play two-legged ties to get into the round of 16. And the teams that finish in the top 8 are automatically in the round of 16. So at least you help yourself, by avoiding that round if you are a Premier League team. And it helps because, like I said, all Premier League teams tend to have a very difficult game every weekend. This is not me being a snob because I watch a lot of English football. This is just the nature of the league at the moment. There's so much money there, so that means teams are getting stronger and stronger. And they putting money in good coaching, good data analysis. They put money in talent on the field. So it's one of those where I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't even know what this means. Arsenal is number 1, but I'm not getting carried away with it. You also have Tottenham Hotspur and Liverpool in number 4 and 5. Number 5 is Spurs and Liverpool number 4. And Newcastle is sitting at number 7. So of the 5 English teams, you have Chelsea as well there. So you have Arsenal, Liverpool, Tottenham, Newcastle, and Chelsea. So you already have 5. And then Manchester City, because I forgot that Tottenham qualified for the Champions League by winning the Europa League. So there's 6 teams. There's 6 English teams in the top 8 positions in the Champions League. That's going to make the tournament a bit tricky, I think. It's going to make it a bit tricky because that many English teams. Hey, what up, Chase? Multimillionaire That's hashtag goals right there. Hopefully, all of us will get there someday. Hello, guys. Thanks for joining. I'm recording live, and I'm just chatting about the the UEFA Champions League. So I'm looking at the round of like European fixtures from this last week, match week 7, and so then if you look at this, it's very difficult to know, like this is a European competition, but it's very English centered at this point. However, we know what happens when the knockout stages of the Champions League arrive. Doesn't matter like if you finish number 1, number 2, top 8, you're still going to be playing really good teams in that last 16 round moving forward. But yeah, Arsenal traveled to, I'm going to talk about the top 8 teams, and they're kind of like weak, and then look at maybe what are some of the scenarios that are going to be fascinating going into the final round of fixtures. So Arsenal beat Inter Milan 3-1. It was, I think, a game that felt tighter watching it than what the scoreline eventually said. But I won't say Arsenal were lucky. I just think, again, the strength of the Premier League shows up in these situations as it did show up in some of the other fixtures. So Arsenal beat Inter 3-1. They played with Jesus up front. They made about 7 changes for this game, and they were still able to, go to Italy, play against the top team in Serie A, who's sitting on 49 points after about 21 games, and take care of them. Mosquera comes back for his first game in a long time. That means Gabriel's on the bench. Miles Lewis-Skelly gets 90 minutes. Jurriën Timber started, and William Saliba started, from the normal back 4. And then in midfield, Odegaard and Rice didn't start, but Rice comes on after an hour. Odegaard never saw the pitch. Zubimendi played the whole game. Rice came on, did himself as a good favor by getting that. What up, King Von? What up? Rice gets himself the yellow card, which means he can't play. He can't play the next game against Kairat, which means he should be able to be fine going into the knockout stages. And so that means, Arsenal had a good day at the office, so to speak. You start Gabriel Jesus, who's coming back from injury, and he scores 2 goals. And then you replace him with Victor Gyökeres for the last 15 minutes of the game, and he gets a goal from long range. So it was a good day, at the office for Arsenal. I think Inter Milan played a good game, and they think in a way Inter's counter-attacking and big running across the pitch, the verticality of Inter's game might be helpful for Arsenal playing against Manchester United as their next opponent in the Premier League. So we'll see how that goes. But I do think this Inter game, even though it's an away game, the ghost, welcome my friends, welcome guys. And I think my AI, no, why would I be AI? Is there a lot of AI stuff on TikTok or all these platforms? I'm a podcaster, but yeah, I'm a podcaster. I'm a person. Anyway, this is an interesting thing about recording things live, is that you never know what people are going to pop in and say. So I'm going to just focus on recording the pod, and I'll do questions a little later if you guys have any questions about what I'm talking about. And Bayern, another team that I think, they probably won't necessarily need the break, because usually Bayern just runs the German league anyway, but they're sitting second. They could still, if Arsenal, I guess, loses to Kairat next week by, I don't know, 5 goals or something like that, and then Bayern wins 7-0 or something like that, because the goal difference between Bayern and Arsenal it's not that big. Yeah, it's a 5 goal difference. So that means Arsenal would need to lose by quite a large number of goals against Kairat, and then Bayern Munich would need to win quite handsomely in their last game, which they're capable of doing. Who are they playing next? Let's see. Bayern playing away at PSV Eindhoven. So Bayern playing away at PSV would be, I could see Bayern thumping PSV. I put nothing past Bayern. But I do think I also have a hard time seeing Arsenal losing by that big of a margin, or losing to Kairat at all. It can happen. It's the Champions League. Anything can happen. But if we're calling a spade, yeah, Arsenal are a lock for top 2 minimum at this point. But it looks like they'll be a lock for that first position too. Bayern Munich, are, yeah, they took care of Union Saint-Gilloise. I don't know how to say that name actually. I think they're a Belgian outfit, won 2-0, and took very simple care of that. Nothing to talk about there. Chelsea won 1-0 against Paphos, and Juventus took care of Benfica 2-0. Liverpool went away to Marseille and won 3-0. Newcastle took care of PSV at home and won 3-0. Barcelona made a Barcelona just conceded too many goals, but eventually they won 4-2 against Slavia Prague. And then in the Tuesday games, Real Madrid was probably the one I wanted to talk about the most because, again, like I said, I don't want to focus too much on specific games this weekend. I just want to look at the overall picture of the Champions League. Real Madrid are an interesting story to me because I do think Xabi Alonso is an excellent coach, like one of the best of this generation of new coaches, for sure. And I think he will have a great career. I also believe that managing Real Madrid, and I put up a video early in the season, like, the challenge with Madrid and the way the club is set up, whether good coaching is what they need or somebody who is like an uncle, like a person who gets out of the way enough of the players. You know what I mean? Like coaches, but doesn't coach as much as an Ateta, for example, or an Alonso or a Pep Guardiola or I feel like Real Madrid needs somebody who manages personalities as well as you need to know enough about football. I'm not going to minimize Carlo Ancelotti's knowledge of football. I think he's a smart football man. However, when I watch the smiles on these guys' faces, I don't know Alvaro Arbeloa as a coach too much. But something tells me he's not a better X's and O's or better like tactical brain than Xabi Alonso. Watching this game, the 6-1 win against Monaco. Now, Monaco, okay, quality of opponent here matters, don't get me wrong. But I've seen Madrid play against teams not as good as Monaco not do this. And so what I saw on the day was Vinicius Jr. looking like Ballon d'Or level player again, playing with a smile on his face, running to his coach after scoring the goal or one of theirs. And he assisted a lot, did a lot of really interesting things. Jude Bellingham finishes it with a 6-1 and celebrates. I just think Real Madrid is a very weird club. I don't think they're a normal club. And I say this not in a denigrating way. I just mean that being a good coach for most clubs doesn't make you a good coach for Real Madrid. That's what I mean. I think Real Madrid, because of the celebrity nature of the way that club is run and I want to call it player power, but I don't even think that's what it is Florentino Perez, who he just runs an interesting vanity project there that doesn't lend itself well to somebody who is going to try and coach the heck out of his players. I think Real Madrid players kind of almost see themselves as collaborators, which in reality, players and coaches are collaborators. But I think there are a lot of coaches where in the modern game, like I think the game has become so coach centered. Like this is what I do. You have to fit into it. This player's like, I see it with like a lot of these guys who have hardly achieved anything in the game, like Enzo Maresca kicking people out of the team. And Mikel Arteta also like initially was like guilty of some of these things. Now he's proven to be right, to have wanted to do that. But I think a club like Arsenal maybe is more suited for that kind of a coach who is the alpha among alphas, right? Like the alpha of all alphas. Whereas maybe if you are like working at a Madrid, you need to understand like, these kids are just as impactful and they have a bigger following than you and they have a bigger say to the people upstairs. It would appear because there's more of them to let go than there is of you, as a coach and coaching staff. I'm glad I'm not a Real Madrid fan. They can win as all the things they win and that's fine. And I'm not going to talk smack about them, but I just think it's a very interesting thing to see there. Like you can see that these kids now are back in an environment that they want, you know what I mean? That they want to be part of this now when they playing with their tails up. And who knows? We'll see what it does for them in the knockout rounds. But they're sitting third on the table of the Champions League. And yeah, it looks to me like they're odds on to finish top 8. Let me see who they have in their next game. But like Madrid sitting in third position on 15 points, yeah, I think a draw will get them in because of their decent goal difference, especially with this last game. But let me see who they have next round of games. Benfica actually has nothing to play for. My bad. Benfica is on 6 points, so they're out of the Champions League. So they'll be playing for pride and just enjoying a big game with with the big boys in town, and they are not going to qualify even if they win. They're out of the Champions League. And then Liverpool has been pretty good. The last time they lost was that embarrassing, 4-1 loss at home to PSV. Since then, they've been very solid and they've gone on and kept 2 clean sheets with a 1-0 win away at Inter, which they were slightly lucky to win that one, but they did it. And then 3-0 win away at Marseille this last week. So Liverpool have also left themselves in a good position. They're playing at home against Karabakh next week, so they will finish on 18 points and will definitely be in those kind of like top 4 positions. I think they're not going to move. Them in Madrid, if they win their last games, that's the top 4. Gives them second leg at home up until I think the quarterfinals maybe, or the semifinals. No, semifinals is top 2. You get second leg at home all the way if you finish top 2. And the top 4 teams, I think, get second legs as well for the earlier rounds of the knockout. And then you have Tottenham Hotspur, actually. I spoke about them in my last podcast. And I was talking about Thomas Frank needing to win 4 of the next 6 or 7 games between now and the end of February. And he won the first one, which is Borussia Dortmund. And he now has to stay on that track, but he does have some really difficult Premier League games coming up. But for him, I think if he doesn't lose this coming weekend, and then he goes to Frankfurt and finishes this off, because Tottenham is on 14 points. If he goes to Frankfurt and wins, that means Tottenham are going to be on 17 points, and Man City wouldn't be able to catch them on the table. City should win their next game because I think Newcastle is the one who may be worried about their next game, because it's number 6 versus number 7 next week in Paris. Saint-Germain is hosting Newcastle for the last game of the this league round. So that's going to be interesting to see how that one finishes up, because if City win their game, whoever loses that game, or if it's a draw, City will leapfrog both of those teams, and because they will have 16 points. Newcastle and Paris Saint-Germain, if they draw, they will both be on 14 points. Now, if PSG or Newcastle win, City will probably beat them on goal difference, because I think City will try and score a lot of goals against who they playing against next week. It's a home game, I think. Galatasaray. So no, maybe they won't get as many goals. Galatasaray is a decent team. They are sitting on number 17. So Galatasaray will finish unless something really miraculous happens below them, they should be able to finish in the top 24 positions. But actually, Napoli has a lot to play for in the game against Chelsea next week. That's their final game. It's a home game against Chelsea. They're on 8 points now. A win gets them into, one of those playoff spots. Okay? That's going to be interesting. Chelsea is going away to Napoli, and I don't know, how well that's going to go for them. Chelsea is a better team than Napoli in terms of talent, but it's away. And, the experience of Napoli could help you a little bit, and the experience of Antonio Conte can help you a little bit. But we'll see how that one goes. I think the English teams are definitely looking like they're all going to be in the round of 16. Five of the 6. Looks like there's a big chance you have 5 of the 6 in the round of 16, and that means you're going to get quite a few English against English team ties in those knockout stages. That's going to make the Champions League feel less continental and more like an FA Cup. I'm not sure how I really feel about that, but your teams have to earn their spots in the competition, and they've done what they needed to do. Of course, they're the wealthier teams, and we'll see how do you say this? We'll see how it shakes up. But man, the Champions League is all about getting teams from all around Europe and, getting all of the ties that you don't get to see all the time. But some of these English teams are going to be playing 2 extra fixtures against each other at this rate. because that's how, I guess, the strength of the Premier League, or so-called strength of the Premier League, versus the other leagues in Europe at the moment, where you can have Tottenham, who, are struggling in the Premier League, and they host Borussia Dortmund, who's played many European finals and perennial league challengers in Germany, and they come to, the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and they get cleaned up, basically, right? So it is one of them things where it's like, okay, at this point, you're just gonna have to play whoever's in front of you. There's no running from it. There's no running from it. But the Champions League new format is, I think the jury is still out, if I'm being honest, because I just don't know if this means we have a better competition. I know it means we have more games, but as far as the quality of the competition, I'm not convinced just yet, especially when you have situations like this where right now almost every English team is going to be in the round of 16. 16 teams, 6 English teams. That's not a good look for Europe. But I'm happy for the English teams. They're handling their business. However, I'm not sure how good that is for Europe or the Champions League itself. But let me know what you guys think in the comments about all that. I don't like a league that's dominated by one team. I also don't like this heavy presence of like English team in the later stages of the Champions League. It just destroys, for me anyway, the continental aspect to the game. Traveling to big European stadiums and having your away games and whatever. But yeah, I don't know who is going to win this competition, but Bayern looks good. Arsenal looks good. Can never, bet against the champion, but I not sure that PSG has, especially after playing the Club World Cup and making it to the final of that and going deep last year too. And I'm not sure if they will repeat, but I think they're going to make noise. I don't think they're going to, let go of this trophy without making some noise. I do think Real Madrid are always a team to be respected in this competition. They have a weird relationship with it, a successfully weird one, right? It's very, very big success for them in this competition, more so than any other club in the history of the tournament by a long way. So, for anyone to knock them out, they're gonna need something, something special. Like, for example, what Arsenal did last year, which was epic in the history of Arsenal. And I also think Barcelona will make some noise, but their defense is gonna continue to hamstring them, or their lack of defense. It's almost like defending is optional in this team. I know they do the pressing thing, and that's how they try to defend, but they give up too many opportunities the other way. And that's why I have a hard time believing that Barcelona will go all the way. I think they'll be fun to watch, and they'll be exciting, and they can probably win some games, but I don't know if they can win ties playing like this, unless they find a way to defend better as a team. I think their team defense is just too weak to survive across 2 legs against a lot of the teams that remain in the tournament. Newcastle will be hoping to stay in the top 8 because they also have a second leg in the Carabao Cup semi-finals. Arsenal the same, but they'll be in the top 8 for sure. Chelsea have a second leg against Arsenal too, but it's not guaranteed at this moment that they will be in the top 8 because they have to travel to Italy, and Napoli are playing for their lives, it seems, at this point, because Napoli have to play into the playoff spots at the moment. They're just outside. They're sitting at number 25. So that's going to be interesting to see. And for the rest of the Champions League, I don't see teams that are going to be very threatening. I think most of the teams that finish number 9 to number 16, I think will eventually make the round of 16. I think so, because as things stand, City, Barcelona, I don't see them losing to these teams. Athletic Club, Olympiacos, PSV, Monaco, Marseille, because of Roberto De Zerbi, might be a problem. But I don't. Let me see first who they have next week. They're playing away at Brugge. Where is Brugge in this conversation? Brugge is number 27. So Brugge could still leapfrog Marseille if they win that game. So they have their work cut out, Marseille. But Teams like Brugge can make noise too in the last, in the playoff play-in phase. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like, it's gonna be weird. I think the dark horse of this Champions League season is gonna be like Newcastle or Spurs. It seems like teams that nobody saw coming, but they're right there at the top. Like, you would expect an Arsenal, Madrid, Bayern, Liverpool, City, maybe even Chelsea, Atletico Madrid to be closer to those positions in the top eight, but Newcastle and Spurs have forced the issue and they're right in there, and they skip around if they stay in the top eight. So, like, there's a lot to play for here. It's a bit more lottery, this Champions League format, than it felt before, but we'll see. We'll see how it shakes up. But it's been a very interestingly weird new season of the second season of this Champions League format. I'm still not used to it. I still kind of use it as a way to take a break from the Premier League's demanding fixtures, as a person who consumes the Premier League more so than any other league. But yeah, that's the European kind of thing at the moment. It's a bit like, I think everybody's trying to find money and find ways to get more of it. And as a result, you end up diluting really good competitions. But we'll see how it all falls. Hopefully everybody is enjoying the games when they're on show, because the games are fun, but it's just hard to make sense of the big picture every time I look at it. Anyway, I'm going to end this European chat over here, and I'll talk to you guys on the next one. Cheers.